with this week's Torah portion, which is Vayakhel.
Yes.
Vayakhel. And these past weeks of the Torah portion are all discussing the building of the tabernacle, the building of the Mishkan, which is the mini Beis Hamikdash that the Jews traveled with in the desert till they came to the land of Israel, and they put the tabernacle in the city of Shiloh. And years later, King Solomon built the everlasting first Beis Hamikdash in Jerusalem. So the question is, why is there so many Torah portions about the tabernacle, the Mishkan? More passages are spent on the building of the Mishkan than the creation of the world. And the answer is that the tabernacle, as it says, v'asali mishdash v'shachanti b'saycham, the tabernacle is the symbolic not only of the structure, the Mishkan where God rested and revealed himself when the Jews were traveling, but it's make me a tabernacle that I should dwell within them, plural. But if there's only one tabernacle, why saying I will dwell within them? To teach us that it's not only referring to build me a tabernacle, the physical structure of the Mishkan, where the Jews brought offerings and saw the divine revelations, but it means that in every single Jew, every single Jewish home is a tabernacle, a mini tabernacle. So even when we don't physically have the tabernacle or the Beit HaMikdash, till Mashiach comes, each and every home, each and every one of us makes ourselves a vessel, a vehicle, a tabernacle for God to rest within us and reveal himself within our homes, within our lives. And how do we do that? By connecting to our divine soul, the neshama, and God by doing mitzvahs and studying Torah and so on. So that's why there's so many passages, because every lesson in the Torah is not only the story or the directions, but it's also many layers of lessons that apply to us in the year 2025, as in addition to having the external superficial passages which refer to, for example, how to build a tabernacle, what materials to use. And yet those, if you dig deeper and deeper, every one of those lessons also has a lesson for how to live our lives in a more connected, spiritual, happy, fulfilling way. So today I want to share one of those lessons, which I feel especially relates very much to the feminine energy. So this passage opens up where God describes in the Torah, Vayavu ha'anashim al hanashim kol nidiv leiv heviu chaz v'nazim v'tabas rechumaz kol klei zav v'chol ish asher henif tenufa zav l'Hashem. That when they were ready to build the tabernacle, they announced, we need donations, we need contributions. As a matter of fact, there were so many donations and contributions that Moshe had to announce, stop, we have enough. And you know that doesn't usually happen. Did you ever go to a shul where they said we have enough donations? Did you ever go to a Jewish organization where they go, stop giving, we have enough money?
Yeah.
We're always asking, we always need more and more. And here, there was so much given, there was such generosity, Moshe actually had to say, stop, we have enough donations, which is unheard of.
Yeah,
you know, there was once a shul, and the roof was caving in, so the rabbi got up to make an appeal. He says, I have the bad news is the roof is caving in. The good news, we have the money. We're in your pockets. That's the good news. So the passage actually is very interesting because it says there, Vayavayu ha'anoshim al hanoshim. The men followed the women. Every generous-hearted person, which means the women gave their jewelry first, and then the men gave their jewelry and their valuables. Interesting. that here it's showing in the Torah that the men followed the directives of their wives. The wives led the way in donation and contributions. Where else do we see that the women went first? In the giving of the Torah. God says to Moshe, Koi samar lebeis Yaakov v'sagid lebnei Yisrael. First, teach the women the Torah, the Beis Yaakov, the house of Jacob, and then teach Bnei Yisrael, the men. That's why it's repetition, Rashi says. Why do you need to say, teach the house of Jacob and teach the people of the children of Israel? Aren't the house of Jacob the children of Israel? Jacob and Israel were the same name for Yaakov. Yaakov's name was Jacob, and is also called Yisrael.
Right.
So Rashi says that's how we know that God is referring to Beis Yaakov. That's why, a lot of girls' yeshivas are called Beis Yaakov, the house of Jacob. There's Beis Rivka, Beis Yaakov, and then teach the men Bnei Yisrael. So by the giving of the Torah and teaching the Torah, God said to Moshe, teach the women first, then teach the men. Why? Because we know if the women are given the Torah first, it will be transmitted accurately from generation to generation. Because look at the giving at the beginning of time when God created Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. God says to Adam, you can eat from any tree, but don't eat from the tree of knowledge, Eitz Hadas.
Right.
Don't eat from the tree. Now Adam goes to Chava and he says, I have a directive from God. We can eat from any tree, but not from the tree of knowledge. And as a matter of fact, he says to Chava, not only you can't eat from that tree, you can't touch that tree. God never said you couldn't touch the tree. So when the snake, the evil inclination manifested in the snake, came to Chava, the Medrash says he pushed her against the tree. He said, oh, you see? Nothing happened to you. You touched a tree and nothing happened, which means your husband just doesn't want you to have the benefit of this tree. You're allowed to eat from this tree. So by changing the directive, inadvertently, Adam caused Chava to eat from the tree. She thought he's lying. So that's why God said, now when I give the Torah, I'm giving it to the women. They're not going to change any details. The way I give it, the way you teach it is the way they will impart it and practice it. So there the women led, and now donations, the women led. Now the reputation that women have, don't want to part with their jewelry, you see, is not true. The women gave first. And what did they give? They brought the earrings, their nose rings, their finger rings, and the armbands, all kinds of golden objects, and every man who waved a waving of gold to the Lord. So there's something a little perplexing about this passage. One, it says they gave all kinds of golden objects, right?
Right.
You have to specify which golden objects. If I say to you, everyone gave money, do you have to say, oh, they gave nickels, dimes, and quarters? They gave $10,000. You don't have to know the denominations. So that's the first question. But why doesn't it list all types of jewelry then? It's missing necklaces. It's missing bracelets. Armband is up here. Bracelet is down here.
Right.
It's missing cufflinks, maybe. I don't know. Do women wear cufflinks? Why does it only specify a few items? That's the second question. So, and the men didn't have jewelry that they brought? Why doesn't it say? And the men brought their gold watches, and the men brought their gold necklaces, and the men brought their rings. It only emphasizes what the women brought, not what the men brought. We have a few questions here. Shelley, do you have any insights?
I'm listening. It's all interesting. I think because the women, I think the women are, the ones who keep in order in the household and all of that. And I think that they are very intelligent. I think Hashem realized that too.
Very good. Very good. Very good. And lastly, before we go into the explanation, everything was melted down, right? They didn't hang jewelry in the tabernacle, in the Mishkan. They melted down. And they had gold to make everything, the menorah, the ark, the table, the vessels. So they were melting everything anyway, right? So why specify what they gave? Who cares?
Doesn't matter.
Right. Doesn't matter if you gave your earrings, your nose ring, your armband, or your bracelet. Anyway, they were melting it down. So why the Torah, who's always so concise, give this detail? So we know that Torah only gives details if there's a relevant message, if there's something the Torah wants to impart and teach us. Otherwise, the Torah is extremely concise. Mm-hmm. So the answer is that therein, like we mentioned before, it tells us the story of what happened, but there's also the insight and the lesson of what's happening for all times and all places. So an interesting thing happened in March of 1934. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was in Riga, Latvia, and he came to the city, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, and he's asked if he could speak to the Jewish women of the community. And he made like a farbrengen and gathering for the Jewish women. Now, why it's so fascinating? Because if you recall, the 1934, women were not yet, there was no feminist movement. Society hadn't yet recognized women as equal. Yet we see, and I say this time and time again, that when it came to Torah and to the Rebbes and to Chabad and the Jewish world, women were always and are always considered equal to their male counterparts, partners in the world, partners in creation. So, and here we see positive proof that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe asked not to meet with the men of the community, which you would say, well, a Rebbe wants to meet with the men. The women can listen, but he's going to meet with the men. The Rebbe asked to meet with the women. And the Rebbe met with the women, and he said to them how, just like at the giving of the Torah, Moshe taught the Torah first to the women, I too want to impart to the women 4 pillars of education based on this passage, this pasuk in Vayakhel. So why does it specify which pieces of jewelry, says the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe? Because there's 4 approaches to education, educating our children and educating the future generation. You know, there was a famous book came out many years ago. It was called Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. You ever heard of it?
Oh, yes.
By Amy Chu or something. And she was, the American children are undisciplined.
Right.
They're allowed to do whatever they want. And that's why their education has gone way down. While I know how to educate, discipline, discipline, discipline. No room for error here. And she was her whole book was based on discipline and discipline. And they found it to be in many ways not adequate. You know, you can not only discipline, you also need compassion with discipline.
Yeah.
Every child needs a different approach. It says, Chanech hanar al pi darko, in Ethics of Our Fathers, educate a child according to his or her way, which means every child needs a different approach. Some kids need discipline. Some kids need compassion. Some kids need a little discipline, a little compassion. Every child, you need to look at that child and see what is the best way to educate this child. What do they need? Mm-hmm. So the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said that each one of these items explains how to educate the next generation and maybe even how to educate ourselves, you know, those of us who don't have little children anymore. Right. So the first thing he said, what does it say? Earrings. Earrings. What is earrings? Earrings is on the ear. That every day in our prayers we say, Shema Yisrael, hear God. God is one. Hear, the power of hearing. Mm-hmm. You can't give advice and guidance to a child if you don't hear what they're all about, if you don't hear what they're saying. Like Stephen Covey wrote a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right?
Yes, right? Yes.
If you want to be understood, you have to understand. First, you have to hear what is the other person saying. What is their mindset? Then you will be understood. Then you can respond. But if you don't understand and you don't hear your child or hear your husband or spouse or whoever you want to have a relationship with, how could they understand you if you don't understand them first?
No.
First, understand their viewpoint, what they're telling you, then you can give them guidance and advice. Most of us, we don't want to listen, myself included. I sometimes find it hard to listen. So I right away blurt out. My kid said, Ma, I just want to vent. I just want to share. I'm not asking you for a response. So many times you just have to hear it out. Use your ears. Listen to your child. Listen to how they feel. Don't dismiss. We're very dismissive, saying, oh, yeah, I heard it already. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say. Let me tell you my opinion.
Exactly.
If you don't, right? If you don't understand, you can't be understood. So that's the first thing, says the Freida Rebbe. You have to be understood, you have to understand first. You have to use the power of listen and hearing before you blurt out what you think, your advice, your opinion. So that's the concept of the earring. This next thing is the nose ring. I know we don't wear nose rings.
No.
although some women wear and men too.
They do. Yes, they do.
I went to take my daughter for a haircut a long time ago, and I'm trying to figure out what is that bump that the hairstylist has on her nose. And she need a doctor, and I look closer. It's a nose ring. I thought it was she needed a dermatologist.
Yeah, for sure.
Not to negate anyone who wears a nose ring. If you like it, wear it. So nose is symbolic of the sense of smell. The sense of smell. Good morning, Laura. The sense of smell. The sense of smell is that you have to sense what somebody is feeling. If you want to educate somebody, if you want to influence someone, you have to be in touch with what they're feeling. Are they feeling pain? Are they feeling hurt? Are they feeling alienation? Are they being bullied?
Yeah.
It's a sense of smell means being a good communicator. A good communicator senses the audience, senses the other person. You have to understand, what is the person feeling? How could you educate your child or help your child if you don't know what they're feeling? If you're not sensing and using your women's intuition, women's intuition is such a powerful thing. Your child comes home from school, I'm sure it happened to all of us, and they throw their knapsack down on the floor with a thump. They had a bad day. Did you have a bad day? Just the way they threw the knapsack or the backpack across the living room floor, they had a bad day. So sometimes it's not asking and talking, it's sensing, smelling. And then once you sense what's going on with the other person, then you could respond. But if you're not in touch with their feelings or their emotions or how they're feeling, it's very hard to respond and help somebody if you're not in touch. So that's the second way that we educate a person or our children, is you have to have that sense. Laura, just to fill you in, we're discussing the jewelry that the Jewish women brought to be melted down for the tabernacle. And they brought 5 different types of jewelry. And the summation of the class so far is why does the Torah specify which jewelry they bought? So the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, in his address to women in Riga in 1934, said because it's different approaches to education of our homes, our families, and relationships. So we did earrings, nose rings, and now we're up to finger rings. What's the concept of a finger ring? Shelley, you have any suggestions, ideas?
Well, to me, a finger ring is a commitment.
Good, very good. Right, like a marriage ring.
Yeah, like a marriage ring. I don't know, a finger ring. It's also attractive. It's pretty. It gets everybody's attention sometimes.
Yeah, good. So a finger ring is pointing. You point with your finger when you want to emphasize. You go this.
Yeah, right,
this.
right.
In education today, and you, Shelley, you were a principal in the school for many years. We're afraid to point out to our children, to our students, this is the way you should do it.
Yeah.
We tiptoe around. We're afraid sometimes to give direction and
Yeah.
say, this is the truth and this is the false. This is good and this is the opposite of good.
Yeah.
We're afraid to point out what is moral and ethical and what is not. That's why society took such a downspin, because we couldn't point out that there's a male and a female and that's it.
Yeah, right.
That you
Exactly.
can't have different, there was no other creations. God didn't make any other sub
Yeah. No,
they, them. You're
he
either
did
a
not.
man or you're a woman. You were either born with male anatomy or
Mhm.
you were born with female anatomy and
Yeah.
female DNA and the Jewish soul of the feminine soul and the masculine soul. So
Yeah.
Friedrich Rebbe said, rearing a ring is indicative of pointing somebody in the right direction.
Right.
Put your finger and say, this is the way it's done. There's no question about it. Marriage is between a man and a woman, not between a man and a man, not between a woman and a woman, not between a man and a donkey. It is a male and a female. We have to not be afraid to stand up for what's right, what's moral and ethical. How do we know? The Torah tells us. Like somebody said to me sometimes, don't you feel compassion? I feel it's not a matter that I don't feel. I love every person. I'm never going to go over and denigrate somebody. But you're asking me if based on Torah values, it's morally right? No, not. If it was up to me, I would change my mind every day because I'm a human being.
Right.
But because the Torah set down certain morality and ethics and what everything is in life, that's how we know. Otherwise, society changes from day to day. The Nazi regime said killing anyone who's not like us is legal, is ethical, is moral. We want to cleanse the world of those unholy, horrible people that are ruining the DNA of the society.
Right.
For them, it was moral and ethical. In the times of the Greeks, it was fine to have torture people and have slaves and abuse little children. That's what I mean. That's our society. It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
So society's corruption can always be counteracted by Torah. Torah doesn't change just because the leader decided killing is ethical and old people don't deserve to live past 80 because they're not contributing to society anymore.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Torah gives us the ethics and the morals and the rules of how we live our lives in every aspect. So we can't be afraid to point our finger and say, you know what? This is the truth.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the previous episode said there was armbands. An armband is a symbol of strength. We have to have strength in our convictions. Stay strong. When you discipline, stay strong. It's so easy to change your mind because you feel bad. Your child is pouting, your child is crying. You dock them from the computer because they went on a site they weren't allowed to go on. You caught them doing something that's detrimental to their mental health. Stay strong. Keep fortified because you're doing the right thing. Many times we question, we take a stance and then we buckle.
Right.
Don't buckle because it is not a child, and a person has to see that there is strength. Children are looking for parents to show strength and direction. They're not looking for you to be their friend, dress like them. Oh, my mother looks just like me. She looks like a teenager. Like I once went shopping with my kids. We were in Gap, and I really wanted a jean jacket. I put one on, and all my girl daughters who are fashionistas said, "Ma, it's gorgeous, buy it." I'm like, yeah, but will people think I'm trying to look like a teenager again? They go, no, mommy, everyone your age is wearing jean jackets. I'm like, okay. A parent doesn't, it's okay if you look young and you get treatments. That's not what I'm talking about. It's like striving to be like your teenage daughter. That's not teenagers don't want their mother to be a teenager. They're looking for a parent.
Yes.
They're looking for direction. They're looking for hierarchy. They're not looking for their mother to act like a teenager again. I had my teenage years.
Yeah.
And if you want to act like a teenager again, go to your friends. Don't do it with your daughter's friends. They're not your friends. They're looking for role models in their lives.
That's right.
You have to be a role model. They don't want their mother. Again, there's nothing wrong with being fun and chatty and eating popcorn in the movie theater and being lively. but not looking at yourself, I'm just like them, I'm also a teenager. And then who do they look up to? If the mother is a teen, who's the mother? Who's the parent? Who's the role model?
Yeah.
So we make that mistake sometimes thinking we have to be a teenager, be youthful, be fun, enjoy life, but don't act like you're a teenager again. You're not a teenager again. And you have to show a role model to yourself, to your contemporaries, to your children, to your community, to society, wherever you are. So here we see the beauty of the direction that the Torah shows the women in such a beautiful, powerful light. One, we gave our jewelry first. You know, usually women have a reputation. They want to hold, it's my jewelry, you can't touch it. Here, the women came with their valuables. And, you know, I always think, what's valuable to me? My marriage band, my diamond engagement ring. I wouldn't be so ready to go give it away to be melted. Yet they took their most valuable possession. Jewelry is very personal for women. I look at all my jewelry and I say, this my husband gave me on my 40th birthday. This my husband gave me at my 50th birthday. I still have a ring my parents gave me for my sweet 16.
Yeah.
So jewelry to a woman is so personal, yet they led the way. They gave the jewelry. To a man, jewelry is not so personal. I don't think. You know.
No.
So, right? Yeah. Men, I mean, there may be their marriage band. God, men don't wear jewelry because people always ask me about it. I'll share. Why don't men in Jewish tradition wear jewelry? We're not talking about a watch. And some men a marriage band, even though by Chabad, the men don't wear marriage bands, is because by the sin of the golden calf, the women refused to give their gold for the golden calf. The men did. The men came to their wives and daughters and said, okay, everybody, hand up your jewelry. We're making a golden calf. The women said, no, we're not. Not with my jewelry. So here you see, when it was the golden calf, the women refused to give their jewelry. They didn't listen to their husbands, fathers, and sons. That's so the tradition is that women didn't give the jewelry. We wear jewelry. Men, it's a reminiscent of the fact that they did give jewelry, don't wear jewelry, as like a repentance for giving the jewelry. So here you see, it's interesting. The women didn't give jewelry for the wrong thing. They gave the jewelry for the right thing. Again, you see how women led the way and continue to lead the way, you know? We women, we have that special spiritual connection, that very godly soul. You know, so it comes to education. It's a beautiful story with the Baal Shem Tov, and we'll conclude with this, is the Baal Shem Tov had a father, came to him crying, Rebbe, my son is no longer consider himself Jewish. He doesn't eat kosher. He doesn't keep Shabbos. He doesn't act in a moral, ethical way. I'm so devastated. What should I do? So the Baal Shem Tov looked at the father and he said, do you love your son? He says, of course I love my son. Baal Shem Tov said, love him more. Love him more. This child needs even more love. So this is the foundation of education. You sometimes think we have to be harsh, we have to be judgmental. No. Sometimes a child, what do they need more than anything? Acceptance and love. And then eventually they'll come and do what's right, Torah and mitzvahs. But never discount a child or a person because, oh, he doesn't keep Shabbos, she doesn't keep kosher. No, show love, show acceptance. And, you know, like you can get so much more with love than with discipline. We're not saying no discipline, but sometimes love makes the world go round. That's what Jewish people, children need. Love should be our first defense. Then you see what else they need. But love and compassion has to be the first line of defense in education. And that's why, just another interesting tidbit to bring it all together, is when Noah was in the ark, the God destroyed the whole world except Noah and his family and the animals species that came on the ark. And then it was time to leave the ark. How did Noah know if he could leave the ark? Maybe the flood did not recede. He'll go out, he'll drown. So he sent out a raven. A raven, if the raven would go and find dry land and not come back, he knows he can go out. So the raven came back, and then he sends a raven again a little while later to see 7 days later. Maybe now the water received. Again, the raven came back. So the third time, Noah sends a dove, and it comes back with a leaf, which means it's dry land. And now Noah knows he can go off the ark with his family. Remember the story? That's why a dove is a sign of love, and a leaf, peace and dry land.
Right.
Rebuild the world. So the question Hasidic Jewish mysticism asks, he sent the raven twice. Why didn't he send the raven the third time? Why switch the bird? Right?
Right.
So the Hasidus explains a beautiful concept. Raven is symbolic of judgment, discipline. The witch always has a raven on her shoulder. The raven is always good morning, Margaret. The raven is always a sign of, Edgar Allan Poe, the raven, nevermore, darkness. Noah said, now we're going to rebuild the world with judgment, with discipline, with strength. We're not going to allow people to just do whatever they want and have the world destroyed again. So God said, no. Mm-hmm. Raven 1, no. Raven 2, no. The world must be rebuilt with love, a dove, peace, harmony, compassion has to be the first line of defense when we build our world. And that's why when he sent the dove, he was able to go out to dry land because he realized the message God was trying to tell him. So when the Torah tells us the 4 pillars of education, we need strength, we need discipline, we need to show our children and our families and our friends compassion, but we also need discipline. We need strength in our convictions, and we need to be able to sense someone's pain, someone's sorrow. And we also need to listen. If you want to be understood, you have to understand first. You have to hear the person's viewpoint. Then they'll be receptive to listening to you. But if you scream it out and you don't understand their viewpoint and show that you can hear, then they will not be receptive to what you have to say as a leader, as a teacher, as a parent, as a friend. Listen. Then you have plenty of time to say your opinion. My kids sent me once a t-shirt that said, may I make a suggestion? Because I'm always saying to them, may I make a suggestion? Do it this way. Another thing I want to share, one more little tidbit before we close the class, is that people say to me, how do you tell your grown children what to do? They're married, they have children. I said, listen, I tell my kids like this, I'm always going to be your mother till 190 years old.
Yeah.
And I will always tell you what I think when I see something is not right or something should be done differently. You have a choice. You can listen to me or you cannot listen to me. But as a mother, I have an obligation to share my opinion in a nice way, in a politically correct way, whatever, compassionate way. But as a mother, that's my responsibility. If you see your child is going and heading towards a speeding train, you're not going to say, don't go there. You're going to be hit by the train because you don't want to say your opinion. After all, they're grown adults. No, say it, tell your opinion and do it in a nice way. Your child can listen to you or your child cannot listen to you. Right?
Yes.
And now we're not talking about the in-law children. My line with my in-laws is, mother-in-laws are meant to be seen and not heard, and sometimes not even seen. That's my little shtick. Before we finish the class, I want to share something so beautiful that I read about the hostages that were released, which is just so magnificent. Is that, they told their stories, 500 days in tunnels, tortured, starved, worse than Holocaust survivors they were treated.
Yeah.
And one fellow says that he was first moved from place to place, but initially he was in a place, there was a television. And on the television, while he was a hostage, he saw a video of Israel some restaurant, and the guy, Jewish guy, is making a bracha on a piece of cake. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam b'orei minei mezainos, which is the blessing on baked goods. He said, I never made a bracha in my entire life. I never made a blessing before I ate, drank. I'm not a religious Jew. That video stayed with me. When they threw me into the tunnel, I started to make blessings every single day, but I only knew that one blessing that I saw on the TV. So whatever I was given, it was b'orei minei mezainos. No matter what I was given, water, b'orei minei mezainos. A pita, b'orei minei mezainos. He said, I made a blessing every single time I ate food just from watching that video. Where? As a hostage. And like, it tears your heart to see how in bondage, in the most devastating of circumstances, the Jewish hostages came out not only as heroes, transformed to such a, they're tzaddikim, they're the most righteous of the righteous. They are heroes. That's all I could say. That's all I could say. And another girl said she kept Shabbos in bondage. She was kept in a home for a while, and and she was their cook, their maid, and she refused to cook on Shabbos. She says, I never kept Shabbos. I was not a religious Jew, but I decided I'm keeping Shabbos. I am not cooking. I'm not desecrating the Shabbos. Now, you know that in dire circumstances, you're allowed to desecrate the Shabbos. You're allowed to eat non-kosher to survive. You're allowed to do things for survival. Human life is most important. But yet, she didn't desecrate. And one more story with Omer Shem Tov. He tells that they had him in a horrible, dark tunnel alone. Horrible, just the solitude could kill you. Solitary confinement in chains. And then they schlepped him out and they said, bow, kneel right now. And he remembered seeing pictures of people kneeling and them shooting them in the head. And he remembered the story of Purim, where Mordechai lo yichre v'lo yishtachave. Mordechai refused to bow to Haman because he was wearing an idol necklace. So Mordechai, the leader of the Jewish people, said, I'm never going to bow to Haman because I have to show an example. You cannot bow to idolatry. I only bow to God. That's why Haman wanted to hang Mordechai. So he remembered the story. He said, I'm going to kneel to a terrorist. I'm going to kneel to a terrorist, to idolatry, to someone who celebrates death and killing? No way. He says, I'm not going to bow. And he refused to kneel. He refused to kneel. So here's 3 stories I just read, and like it broke my heart, but it also showed me like the soul, the neshama, the pintele Jew, the pintele Yid that's inside, the godly soul rises time and time again and can never, 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 never be beaten down. Never. No matter what happens. No matter how, and you can't make up these stories. These are stories they told on live television. Their strength shows time and time again. And we have to ask ourselves as we read the stories in the Torah, what is going to be my story? Is my story going to be the story where I see hope? Or is my story going to be where we give up? We say enough is enough already. I don't want to relate to Judaism. It's not for me anymore. Our story has to be the story that we are always going to be victorious. We will always survive and we will thrive, not only survive. This is who we are. Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai. So I want to wish everybody a wonderful, peaceful Shabbat.